Okay, welcome to tonight's Parsha Shiur. This opening idea is something we discussed in previous years. I want to add something, a new idea that I read this year, which sheds light on this topic. Parshas Pinchos begins, of course, with Pinchos getting the Bris Shalom, and then the Parsha continues and it lists the genealogy of Klal Yisrael. And then in last week's Parsha we saw the demise. 2 weeks ago, Parshas Chukas, of Miriam and of Aaron. And in this week's Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu is told that he is not going to go into Eretz Yisrael and he needs to find a new leader. Says the Pasuk, that as soon as he's told is that he's not going to go into Eretz Yisrael, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need to choose a worthy successor to lead Klal Yisrael. Says Rashi, as soon as he was told that he's not going to Eretz Yisrael, his initial response is, what's going to be with Klal Yisrael? And they put aside their own concerns and they focus on the needs of the tzibur. A tremendous praise for Moshe Rabbeinu. The difficulty is, this as we discussed in previous years, the next Rashi, literally the next pasuk, seems to undo all the great work. Because Rashi says that the parsha that follows it is the parsha of the Bnei Slavchad. The Bnei Slavchad, they're claiming their stake in the land, there are no sons, and do they inherit their father, etc. Says Rashi, Kivin Sheshama Moshe Sha'amale Amokum Ten Nachlas Slavchad LeBnei Sov, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that the daughters do get the inheritance. Now's the time that I should make my claim. That my children should inherit my position. That was not my plan. Kadaihu Yeshua little schar shemushay, that Yeshua should get the reward of his service. Shlomosh mitoichael, he didn't move from the tent. He's been a very loyal disciple, and therefore Yeshua is going to take over your position. The obvious problem with this Rashi, it seems to contradict the previous Rashi. On one hand, in the same breath almost, we see the praise of Moshe Rabbeinu, that as soon as he's told he's going to die and not going to Eretz Yisrael, he says, Yifked Hashem lekei ruches l'chol basa ish alayida, choose a worthy successor. And in the very next Rashi, it's sort of nepotism. Maybe my boys can inherit my position. It's very strange. So in the past, we've given two answers. Let me just quickly remind ourselves of that. The first is that the Pirush on the Sifri, the Rabbeinu Hillel says, it's all to do with the instinctive initial response. It's always very telling. If you want to know something, you sometimes, what is their initial reaction? What's their gut reaction, their instinctive response? And says the Rabbeinu Hillel, Moshe tchilas tiburav lasses b'tzorchet tzibur v'lamed lem panas shnema yifkoit, i.e., that his initial concern was Klal Yisrael. And then, only later, he focuses on his own children, but his initial reaction shows his extreme selflessness. That's one answer. The second answer, I forget where I saw this, it's a fascinating answer, that Moshe Rabbeinu was actually, he knew that his children would not inherit his position. And therefore he asked HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the full knowledge the answer was no. So why did he do it? Because he wanted to bring what's called in the legal world a test case. He wanted to set a precedent, i.e. that there'll be on record that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would say, no, your children aren't worthy of this, and choose Yeshua because he deserves it better. I.e. there would be for all time on record that greatness comes not from yichus, but through hard work and through dedication. And therefore, if you think about it, now the second Rashi is not only not a contradiction, but it actually supports the first Rashi, because it shows the selflessness of Moshe Rabbeinu. The first time he thinks about Klal Yisrael, and the second time he compounds that by saying, a precedent that only worthy leaders should take their father's position and not necessarily their children. So those are the two answers we've shared in the past. Now, a third answer is, it's not really an answer, but it addresses the issue. And that is something I read in the writings of Rabbi Yisrael Besser. He's written another brilliant biography of the Beis Yisrael. The Beis Yisrael was the Ger Rebbe, the son of the Imre Emes, and he was the Ger Rebbe after the Imre Emes died in 1948, till about 1977, I think it was, when he passed away. So he was the Ger Rebbe who rebuilt the Ger Chasidus which was decimated in the war, and he rebuilt it. And I want to just share this anecdote. I've written it out on the handout, but let me just read this to you. To quote Rabbi Besser, Rabbi Yisrael became the Rebbe, the Beis Yisrael, and he rebuilt. He raised a generation of Hasidim on fire with ambitious goals and aspirations, Hasidim yearning for Torah and Kedusha. I don't know if you've seen pictures of the Beis Yisrael, and I used to learn with people. I learned with one individual who was a Ger Chassid, Rabbi Rabin, who was the Rav upstairs in the Adas, and he learned in Chachmei Lublin. He would go to Ger for Shavuos. That was the outside of the Imre Emes, so people would always go there for Shavuos. He would shake when he was talking about the Beis Yisrael. People have a pachad of him. It's hard to describe. You read the book, you get a feel for it. But in just 25 years, the Beis Yisrael, the man with the rapid pace and burning eyes, rebuilt a world, miraculously leading Ger Hasidus to almost unimaginable levels of greatness. And yet, even as he relentlessly demanded more learning, more sanctity, more focus, more intensity, he was at the same time a loving, empathetic, wise shepherd, able to gently and patiently allow people the time and space they needed to grow. The Beis Yisrael himself lost his wife and children in the war. He suffered terribly. And he survived, he came to Israel, he rebuilt. Anyway, let's continue Rabbi Besser's quote. Did Hashem reject Moshe's request, telling him that the position would go to Yeshua? I mean, you read the Pesukim, you read the Rashi, it seems to be that Moshe Rabbeinu is asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please let my sons inherit me. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, no, that's not my plan, Yeshua is going to do it. So it seems that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was rejecting Moshe Rabbeinu's request. In fact, says the Beis Yisrael, Hashem was not refusing Moshe's request, but was granting it, just in a different fashion than Moshe had imagined. You wanted your son to assume your position, and you are getting what you want, the Rebbeinu Shalom told Moshe. You know why? Because Talmidim zenen euch Kinder. Talmidim are also children. Moshe, you thought children could only be biological, but that is not the case. Yeshua, who sat devotedly at your feet learning Torah, is your son too, and he will succeed you. That was the thought shared by this new Rebbe, the Ger Rebbe, very soon after he became the Rebbe in 1948, bereft of his own children, but surrounded by a very small crowd of dedicated, faithful Hasidim, eager to be drawn close, uplifted and taught. Talmidim zenen euch Kinder. That Talmidim are also children. So therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu's request was accepted, but in a different form than what he thought. A very beautiful idea. Okay, let's press on. Now, one more idea on the Parsha. The Pasuk says, so after Yeshua is appointed, the Pasuk says, Vayom Hashem el Moshe, this is paragraph 2, Kach lecha es Yeshua ben Nun asher ish asher ruach bai, he's got spirit of Hashem within him, v'samachto es yodcha olav, and lean your hand on him. Now yodcha is in the singular. Yodcha. Pasuk Chaf Gimel, Vayismech es yodov olav. Yodov there is plural. So Rashi picks up on this. Says Rashi, Vayismech es yodov, this in Chaf Gimel, ba'ayin yofa. He does it generously, wholeheartedly. Yosef v'yosef mashin stavim, more than he was actually commanded. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in the singular, rest your hand on him. Moshe chose to do it with two hands. He made Yeshua into a vessel which was full and overflowing. The Moshe Rabbeinu sort of just poured lavishly and generously into Yeshua. It's very interesting that the same thing repeats itself with Aaron. In Parsha Shmini, this is the third box in paragraph 2, the Pasuk says, Vayisa Aaron Yodov es Yodov el ha'am v'yavorchein, that after the Chanukas HaMishkan, Aaron HaKohen blesses the people. But the Pasuk has a Kriya Kosiv. It's Yodai, it says, but actually we read it Yodov in the plural. And Rashi over there says the same idea, that he's doing it with very generously. Not with one hand, with two hands, because really it's enough to bless with one hand, but if you do it with two hands, that's an expression of sort of an overwhelming feeling of love and of care. Now, that bracha that Aaron gives the people is the precedent of Birchas Kohanim. Now, when it comes to Birchas Kohanim, when the Kohanim bench Klal Yisrael, that has to be done ba'ahava. In fact, the very bracha says, Hamavorech es Am Yisrael b'yahava. Now, so much so that the Mishnah Berurah says, if you look at paragraph, the fourth box in paragraph 2, Avol kohen shatzibur soinim osei. If you've got Nebuch Kohen in the community who's going up to Duchen, but he's disliked by the community, Oishahu soines atzibur, or he hates the community, look at the Lashon Mishnah Berurah. Sakanahu lekohen im yisakapov. It's a danger for the kohen to Duchen, and therefore, he should leave the shul before Ritzei, because otherwise there's a problem of being over an issa, of not duchening when you're called, when you could have duchened. And therefore the best thing to do is just avoid the situation by leaving the shul before Ritzei, which is the trigger time. Unless if he can't overcome his Yetzer Hara and he still hates the people. That is why Chazal instituted the bracha Hamavarech Samei Yisrael bi'ahava, to only do it with love. Less than with love is not really a bracha. So Rav Palm mentions all of this, and he says just a very beautiful observation. Not always, but almost inevitably, Parshas Pinchos is the first Shabbos in the 3 weeks. This is, and we know that Churban Bayis Sheni is primarily because of Sinas Chinam. What's the antidote to Sinas Chinam? Avas Chinam. About blessing people more than you are obligated to do with one hand, but to do it with 2 hands. That's an expression of Avas Chinom, and therefore what we're learning in Parshas Pinchos is that this boundless, generous loving is the counter, is the antidote to Sinas Chinom. So it's very appropriate that it's in Parshas Pinchos that Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't bench V'samachtes Yodcho with 1 hand, but rather Vayismeches Yodov with 2 hands, like Aaron HaKohen does, because really the boundless love is what's going to counter the Sinas Chinom, which is the primary cause of Churban Bayis Sheni. And it's the Avas Chinom which will, in Mitzvah Hashem, bring about the Geula.